So we're going to be in 1 Kings 12. We got a load of them over there if you need one. Just saying. And the title is Discerning the Messages of Media. It's going to be 1 Kings 12, 1 through 19. The central truth is, in a world that is constantly shouting at us, we must be careful to heed God's voice. The key verse is Colossians 3:16. It says, "Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom." So whether on the nightly news or a social media feed, everyone is trying to give their opinion. With the prevalence of smart devices and the easy access they provide, those messages seem louder than ever before. It is as though everyone has an answer to offer and is avidly pushing it. Learning which voices to listen to and which to ignore will help Christians stick to God's path. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Leo. Happy. Morning.
You're fine. We just now started. I mean, I literally just read the first paragraph. You good? Good morning. And Lisa's running away. All right. So the Christians are constantly bombarded with messages from all angles. Who's safe to listen to? The best way for God's people to take in the right messages is by carefully evaluating the counsel they receive and prayerfully discern whether or not it is wise or unwise. It says the reign of Rehoboam provides a stark example of how listening to the right or wrong voices can have a profound effect. He found himself in a complicated situation. After he became the fourth king of Israel, shortly after Solomon's death, though he had the benefits of being the son of the wisest king in Israelite history, he could no longer lean on his father's counsel for the problems he was about to face. Not long after he was crowned, a group of people approached him to give their opinions about how he should rule and to submit a request. Like we often do, Rehoboam asked for the advice of his peers and mentors. He soon discovered not all input is of equal value or produces the same outcome. Part 1, it's called Everyone Has an Opinion. It's 1 Kings 12, 1 through 5. And that says, "And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were to come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass, when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came, and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now, therefore, make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us, lighter, and we will serve thee. And he said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days, then come again to me. And the people departed." So it's easy to be confused by so-called experts who have opinions about everything. As Rehoboam discovered, some people will even seek you out to share their expertise and beliefs. When faced with these unsolicited opinions, Rehoboam wisely said, "Give me 3 days to think it over and come back for my answer." It's always a good idea to pause and evaluate the thoughts and opinions coming your way. And it says, in the age of social media, everyone has a voice, whether or not they have the expertise to back it up. The moment a person mentions a struggle they're going through, self-proclaimed experts rush to solve the problem. Is that you? Is that me? Somebody. Let's see. Nope, it's not mine. All right. Did I turn it back on? Yep. All right, where were we? get self-proclaimed experts to resolve the problem, whether it comes from a person from a home remedy or every ailment or a conspiracy theorist who finds someone else to blame. Unsolicited advice can be unreliable, even when it's offered confidently and enthusiastically. But then again, not all suggestions are incorrect. It can be challenging to sort through the conflicting thoughts and answers that seem to come all at once. When Solomon's son Rehoboam became king of Israel, he was approached by Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel with a request that he lighten the labor demands of taxation Solomon had imposed on them. As the leader of the group making the request, Jeroboam created an interesting dynamic. He had fled to Egypt from Jerusalem to keep Solomon from killing him, and the prophet Ahijah foretold the kingdom would be divided and Jeroboam would be king over 10 of the 12 tribes. Perhaps now that Rehoboam was king, Jeroboam was giving him a chance to do the right thing and keep the kingdom from being divided. Rehoboam took 3 days to consider the people's request rather than reacting immediately. He showed wisdom in setting aside time to think and seek counsel. He also would do well to slowly and carefully think before making quick responses and snap judgments. And one of the things that I had written down when I was taking notes for this was that so you got to be aware of people's opinion, not only their opinions, but also their motives and their background. Because, not everybody is up there, you post something on Facebook or whatever, not everybody is going to be giving their opinion for your benefit. Sometimes it's for their own, sometimes it's to be seen, sometimes it's to, just to troll somebody, as they say, just put stuff out there just to mess you up. And a lot of people, they see that. And, nowadays they've got, they got bots and things like that. They'll just post random stuff and you don't know what they're posting or anything like that. So you kind of have to, discern what's going on with it. And on our own part, when somebody posts a problem, we should examine our own motives in receiving and disseminating information, as well as how we deal with others. Because that, a lot of times I know if you post something trying to help somebody, if you know what's going on, a lot of people will comment back, telling you don't know what's going on, or whatever. Just same thing. They're just trying to mess everything up, muddle the information, and get everything confused.
If you want to get a response, it's like politics. You never do it on Facebook.
Exactly.
Because you get all kinds of.
You'll get all the wrong responses.
Comments.
That's true.
Yep, some people like them, some people don't.
And the bad part about it is, even the ones that don't like you try to give you information.
Yeah.
Right, they just try to mess you up. Like, I don't like what you said, but.
I think that's what the Bible all the time talks about using wisdom when speaking also because also warns is a tongue being like a double-edged sword. It brings life and it brings death too. So again, it's one of those things that the Bible speaks about that a lot. Is that a lot of people do stuff too, or say stuff to you to try not in the feelings of jealousy, bitterness towards you. And stuff like that. So I know I've learned throughout my years that some things you just have to keep close to your chest because sometimes when you speak things out in the air, I guess you'd say the devil can get a hold of it and tear it to pieces. So that too.
It's true.
It's hard to bridle that tongue sometimes.
It really is.
There's certain things that you can, my personal, there's certain things I can talk about and other things I can't talk about. Because my flesh, especially when it comes to child abuse, there's no excuse for it. I don't find no heart in the person, a man or whoever does that. I can't talk about that because that makes me crazy. Because, I guess maybe the way I was raised, the way we was raised, back in the, well, you do unto others as they do unto you.
Right,
You know, turn the cheek, but how many times you turn the cheek, you know?
right, right. It's hard to do.
Mm-hmm. I have but two,
Yeah.
possibly four if if I want to get a little rude, but I ain't turning no more. I can't go no more.
Alright.
But one of the things that,
Get the way, yeah.
I know it is, but one of the things that they talk about, like when we're giving out information, not so much what people are saying back, but when we give information, Psalm 26:2 tells us it says, "Examine me, O Lord, and prove me. Try my reins and my heart." Make sure that what you're saying, is what God wants you to say, not like you said. The flesh gets in the way, and you have a bias towards what's going on. And personally, if there's something that really pushes your buttons, you're not going to think clearly and logically necessarily. You're going to have that emotion behind it, and it's going to be a little biased. And if God's sends you to tell somebody that well, this is what has to happen, and you got that bias behind it, then you kind of lose credibility, and then God's word kind of goes a little off because you changed it instead of putting it out the way God wanted it put out. You're putting your own fleshly biases on it.
God ain't gonna send you out with that bias in it.
Exactly.
He's not gonna give that, no. That's where the flesh wars with the spirit, I mean, on different issues,
Right, but it's still the same thing though. I mean, if somebody asks, I know this is dealing with media and social media and things like that, but somebody says, something's hurting, and do you have a remedy for it? I got a sore throat. What's your remedy for a sore throat? Because I don't have money to go, to the doctor or whatever. Some people will be like, well, you can take some honey or, whatever.
Yeah.
But then other people will be like, well, you want to, mix it with this and this and this, and not knowing, that if you mix all that together, it probably not going to do so well for the person taking it.
You know what my daddy would have said? Get your swig of moonshine.
Yeah, my grandpa always went for brandy.
Yeah. But that's
Moonshine rock candy.
I mean, it's one of the ways,
Mm-hmm.
It's better for you than all this other stuff.
It probably is. Nowadays, they're trying to kill you now.
Put a little bit of lemon in it and
A little bit of flavor.
I think it's funny though, going back to the conversation about how you monitor who you speak. I think a lot of times us as Christians, we over monitor our witness and under monitor our feelings, if that makes sense. I know at the job that I work, I have to talk to people for 8 hours a day. And I've told them, I give it as like a disclaimer straight up from the beginning. I'll tell them, look, I'm saved and I'm a Christian, and I'm not going to hide it. So if I've got certain things that you are uncomfortable with when we're talking, please send me a message, and I'll try to stay away from that side because of legal purposes, I guess you would say in so many words. But I don't know how many times that I can't stop myself from witnessing what God has done for me or what God is doing in my life.
yeah.
And God's got his covering over that. I think a lot, like I said, I think a lot of the time, we've kind of got it backwards as humans, is that we kind of bridle the Christian side of us and under-bridle our emotional side of us. Because if we were more outgoing with what God has done for us in our lives outside of the church, how many people would we impact more than what we do currently? By bridling our tongues, like going over to Kathy's house and saying, "Hey, Kathy, what you doing? It's going to be a great day," or going out to Walmart and smiling at somebody, or "God bless you," or something like that. If we would learn to be more outgoing with what we witness as far as what God's done for us, instead of always going towards the negative and saying, "Well, this is horrible in my life," or talking falsely against someone, just to talk about, talking in general, I think us as Christians need to be more open and speaking and witnessing to people more than we are talking down about people or talking negatively about other people.
Well, that's why you're kind of supposed to lift each other up. That's that the whole Christian thing is that you're not supposed to speak. You don't speak to people unless you're intending to lift them up. I mean, you know, if you're trying to tear them down, then it's not godly at all.
But then again, Roger, how do you lift up a child abuser? How do you lift him up? I can't lift him up. I'm sorry, I can't. And I have to pray hard for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I have to, because I don't have no compassion for people like that. I mean, I don't know if it's my human part or what it
I
is.
know what
Just
you
like
lift
this.
them up with, but I'll keep it on.
Huh?
I said, I know what you lift them up with, but I'll keep back to myself.
See, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Well, I think I had an issue with that probably about 6 months ago. Well, probably about a year ago. I still deal with it. I'm like you. I raised my kids. I love my kids. I love my grandbabies. I can't even think of what people would do to children that I've heard has been done.
Oh, yeah.
But God kind of gave me a revelation on it. You know, He said, irregardless of what that person has done, they're still my child. Irregardless. And God's salvation doesn't show preference to anybody.
That's right.
Again, I see how your facial expressions, but us, we have to be, we have to pray for ourselves.
Oh,
and
yeah,
pray
I
for
agree.
each
That's what I
them.
said. With my person, I've got to,
Yeah.
I have to pray hard and learn. Lord, soften my heart towards people like that. But then again, the Lord tells me, you're human.
Yeah,
I'm human. And the Bible says you got to be as humble as a child. I think the humbleness of me is what
Yes.
I battle with,
I
with
totally agree with
certain
that.
issues.
You know, you have to, I've had to, and I tell you, it's still have some rough times. I had to humble myself before the Lord,
That's right.
If, it's rough, it really is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I had anger. I just had, I was like her, I was mad. Because it was during the Epstein trials and all the other stuff. I was mad. I mean, I wish every single one of them would go straight to the HE double hockey sticks and burn forever. But God says, even though they're doing this, it's the spirit behind them that fuels the fire. They're still my children. And I totally agree with you that, you have to reach a point where you have to become humble before God.
Yeah.
And know that, it's His justice, not my justice.
Right.
And like I said, I understand your anger completely because.
Oh no, if somebody put their hands up on Corey, I guess I just won't be going
That's
through
why
the gates.
that's the way I feel about it.
honestly.
I guess that's well, let's just put this one. I don't care to wear orange.
Me
I
neither.
know when it comes to my grandkids, I don't.
I'm so scared about Bree before she
No,
can
I
talk.
don't.
you know,
I really
and,
don't. No. No.
I do believe, you bust the tail, you train them well.
Yeah. Right, I agree with that. It's just it's a battle, is what it is. You just gotta have I agree with you 100%.
But I think that when you get close to God, when the situation comes up, He helps you work through them.
But that, how would know, well, yeah, but the hurt that you feel, toward, the love that you feel towards your kids and stuff. I mean, how do you just brush it off? I mean,
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough stuff. It's a hard pill to swallow.
oh yeah.
I don't hold you up to it.
You're fine.
Sorry,
Oh,
Roger.
no, you're fine. I just got a response for all of you. Paul. I mean, can you imagine? You come to church and you see everybody. There's 10 of us here. You go out, you come back to church next week. There's 4 of us left because he went out there and killed every one of us.
Yeah.
And because of what we believe. And then, his road to Damascus, God's like, wake up. And then there you go. I mean, Peter was not happy when Paul, walked into the upper room.
He didn't think he was worthy. He was scared of him.
Exactly. And that's why we think the same thing, but.
It's so bad. It's not our job to say who can, who can't.
Exactly. But you don't know who the next Paul's going to be. Or, who's going to, have that moment where, you're like, wow, I did not realize.
But then again, the good Lord, He loved the children.
Mm-hmm.
He loved the kids. And I'm thinking to myself, you're gonna stand before God. And I really believe that they got a special, whatever,
Well, what you do to the least of
from
us, you do to
God
me.
with people like that. I mean, that's what I think, but, you know.
You
I
know,
mean,
we may not see the return of Christ, but, you know, our children or our grandchildren, they will, because this is too close not to be. And I'm gonna tell you, I think we were born in a good place. America may have its ups and downs, but God bless us to live here, because we can live in a country where, you know, our children can have their head cut off or anything like what's going on now.
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah.
so crazy, but, you know, we are blessed. We
I mean, just go to Charleston.
I don't know, God shows me things and he changes my mind. Cause you know how like people will say, these people shouldn't be here, you know, or they shouldn't come across that border. We didn't choose where we could be born to at. You know,
We was your town.
we were born in America and God blessed us to be born here free and well. Then people are trying to get there. Now I think that they should come the right way. I'm not saying that. Like, you know, be citizens and stuff and pay taxes like we do and all that. But, you know, like these people about die to try to get here.
Yeah.
And, you
a lot
know,
of them
and when God showed me that, and as you know, years ago I didn't have, when I would talk about certain subjects, I didn't have the compassion that I had before I was saved.
Right.
And then, I don't know, God just showed me some things about the drug addict, about you know, because I used to say, well, they can go to work like I can.
Yeah.
They can, because I used to think that I got it because of me. That's not true. That's not the way it is. We get nothing because of what we do.
Right.
It's what God does. But that's-
Yeah, I was like that with Iraqi people. You know, I was training in Richlands after Food City before the one in Bluefield opened up. And I don't care if I was in the line and they stepped in behind me, I'd get out the line and move to a different country. I was bad for it, I really was.
Yeah.
And one night I was driving home from Richlands coming to Dick and Jones, and I said, I don't know why. What is, you know, towns are so full of Iraqis. What? And then all I heard was, they know better than you. And then I said, well, you know what? No, they're not.
That's right.
And I thought about that for the longest. And then it took a foreigner to tell me something was wrong with my daughter. So, you know, and I had to tell Dr. Masaka right in his face that I had Ukraine. I told him, I said, I did not like you.
Takes correction, ain't it?
He
God's
told
correction.
me, he said, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
God always let you know, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's not the way it is. You know, when you go to getting off course, I thank God for that Holy Spirit.
Oh, yeah.
They're all humans.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
Good or bad, they're still human.
All right. We'll go ahead and go on. No, you're good. We're going to the second part. It's called Seek Wise Counsel. It's 1 Kings 12, 6 and 7. It says, And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men, and stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto the people this day, and wilt serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. It says, making highly impactful decisions can be challenging. Rehoboam was confronted with such a decision as the newly crowned king of Israel. The consequences of his choices would affect many more people beyond himself. In fact, they would shape the kingdom's future. For especially significant and seemingly life-changing choices, trusted and experienced men and women of God can offer direction based on godly knowledge and wisdom. While it may feel like admitting a lack of knowledge, recognizing that you need outside help is inherently wise, particularly when making decisions that impact other people. Rehoboam first requested the opinion of the men who had counseled his father. The advisors were not only tested in making decisions of this magnitude, but they had benefited from working alongside Solomon, who was renowned for his extraordinary God-given wisdom. They advised Rehoboam to show humility in serving the people so he could gain their trust. This group of older counselors likely understood the people well. Having observed their behavior during Solomon's reign, they attempted to guide Rehoboam as they had his father. The new king would have been wise to listen to them. In our day, it seems everyone with a platform claims to be an expert. It is critical for Christians to know how to discern whose view to trust, especially when talk show hosts act as relationship counselors, radio DJs support pop culture gossip and news, and social media influencers do whatever it takes to get more views and likes. The size of a person's following and even their resume and qualifications do not guarantee their advice will have the intended consequences. Instead of listening to the voices talking the loudest, Christians should listen to experienced believers who offer wise, godly counsel, as well as the confirming voice of the Holy Spirit. And one of the things that in the notes that I had for that one was Proverbs 15, 1 and 2. It says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, and the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness." And one of the questions here says, where should a Christian start when seeking wise counsel for a challenging decision?
With prayer.
Absolutely. I would start with prayer, and I would keep praying until you got an answer. And then, obviously, after that point, one thing that I found out is that, if you have something like that you're working on or whatever, don't tell nobody.
Yeah.
Because the first thing, at least in my case, and I ain't talking about Lisa, but I'm like, oh, I got this, and this going on. This is what come to my mind. This is what's going to happen. You don't want to do that. It'll fail. And that's what happens. God's like, go. And everybody's like, no, you don't want to do that. It'll fail. Don't even try. It's just a waste of time. And you get that a lot when, especially, in my case, like I said, when I first started teaching, when I first started doing sermons and stuff like that, I'd get excited about it. And I'd be like telling people before I'd come up and be like, hey, let me tell you about it. That don't sound right. You don't do that one. Change this or change that. I didn't, but people have wanted to, put their 2 cents worth in. Why don't you say this instead? This sounds a lot cooler. I'm like, I ain't worried about being cool. Just do what I got to do. But
I think that's where you got to have your one-on-one with God.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because you don't know who's talking to you. And, even if you know who's talking to you, you don't know who's telling you.
Right.
Because, even Jesus told Peter, get behind me, Satan. And that was his best friend in the whole world. He shared everything with.
Yeah.
So, if that's going to happen, you don't know who's, just an acquaintance off the street or somebody you work with or even a family member. You don't know.
Just pray in secret,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll reward you openly.
Exactly.
Sometimes things has to be between you and God.
Yep. It's the best way to do it.
Growing up in church, I always used to hear the old timers say, don't speak out anything into existence where the principalities can hear, because then it goes into everything. That's what I would always hear, old timers say, don't speak stuff out in the air because the devil can hear it, and then he can.
Another thing too, I think people give the devil too much credit.
Mm-hmm.
Because he don't have no authority.
Nope.
He wants authority, but he don't have it because we're covered under the blood.
Right.
I guess he's old enough now where his voice won't hurt him.
Right. Right.
Praise God.
Absolutely. All right, we're going on to the second part. Part 2 says, be careful to whom you listen. Seeking counsel in the bubble. It's 1 Kings 12, 8 and 9. It says, but he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. And he said unto them, what counsel give ye that we may answer this people, who have spoken to me, saying, make the yoke which thy father put upon us lighter? And it says, from Illuminati conspiracy theorists to practitioners of absurd religion of Pastafarianism, we can find a community of people online who will agree with whatever you choose to believe. Rehoboam decided to ignore the wisdom of his father's counselors and ask for his friend's advice instead. The great danger in seeking counsel only from people who agree with you is that no matter how wrong the idea may be, they will defend it, even if only for the sake of being right themselves. It's impossible to get wise and impartial advice from an echo chamber. Unfortunately, Rehoboam chose this kind of counsel. He allowed popularity and camaraderie to cloud his judgment, as many people do the same today. Often ratings and upvotes are the standard people use in discerning credibility rather than wisdom, education, or experience. Rehoboam appears to have been guided by a desire for approval from his friends, so he gave their advice more weight than the advice of the counselor he had experienced the exact same issue he was facing. The decision point can be similar for us. A person who is going through a hard time sometimes ignores good advice that calls out their wrongdoing or sinful behavior, choosing instead to listen to the affirming words of their so-called friends. The prevalence of relative truth and political correctness in our culture can influence us to heed advice that runs counter to the Word of God and the leading of the Spirit. However, Christians must not turn away from the godly correction, for the Lord disciplines those who He loves, Hebrews 12:6. So have you ever tried to avoid godly counsel during a difficult season because you knew it would cause discomfort or conviction? I have. I mean, you go through something and you know deep down that what's wrong, and when somebody calls you out for it, you're like, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
That's
I
my
think
fault. I don't want
you
that.
said about that. When you lose someone you love, because that's when it's hard to pray when you lose somebody that you love, because it's been taken away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch different people it's like they get cold on the Lord, but sooner or later, you got to get back with Him.
Absolutely, you sure do. But I think a lot of that too is it comes in our own lack of understanding.
Yeah.
Because you get mad at God for something,
Yeah.
and I mean the Bible tells us that occasionally that death is a form of protection.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't know what's coming down the line that could have affected this person so much worse or whatever. But I mean it goes that route that you have to come back, and sooner than later, preferably. But some people are selfish and whiny and thinking that they're the right one. I'm right. God messed up.
I did like the fact that God is patiently waiting. When we go through the time of healing and anger and bitterness and shaking our fists and all that, he just sits back and just waits. Because he knows, Jeremiah, I know the thoughts and the plans that I have for you. They're plans to prosper and to make you, into the kingdom of heaven. I had live on there. But still, he just sits back and just waits.
Yeah.
Like a father waiting for his prodigal son to come home. He just sits back and waits for his child to come back home because he knows they're gonna come back home. They just gotta get over the mad spell or get over, their stuff that they're dealing with in their human mind. Emotions, I love that part of God. He's just awesome like that.
I know when my nephew got to go, I hate to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
He was 8 years old and was sleigh riding and run over a piece of glass and he bled to death. I was going to Wilco Church of God at the time. And when people holler, all my life I've heard, well, it broke my heart. that broke my heart. Well, I take that for granted, I guess, 'cause getting your heart broke, you know? But when I would leave, with Coach Church of God, the water would be so much where I had cried over losing that baby. I know, I tell people, I know what it is for your heart to be broke. I mean, because there was no explanation for that. That was a freak accident that wasn't supposed to happen. And when you go through something like that, you have got to be, I was just as close as God thought I'd ever been. But it's like I don't know, my heart was broke. And it took at least 60, maybe a year for my heart to understand why God does the things He does, you know. You just got to sit down and just think about it. But it was just, it was horrible. I mean, not knowing why God does, why God, I mean, why would you do, I mean, why would you allow something like that to happen? And I understand people that loses kids and stuff, you know.
It's just like my niece that got killed over at Kimball. She was 16, and she's been dead 23 years, and I tell you, it took me 21 years to even speak her name without crying.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
Yeah.
couldn't take it.
We're not promised tomorrow, though, you know.
No, no.
No, but to go back to what Lisa was saying, talking about, you know, Jeremiah and all that, Jesus did the same thing when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane. You know, it's like, if there's any way that you can take this cup from me, don't let me have to go through this.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, he was basically telling the Father, you know, this is my chance to come home,
Yeah.
but I'm not ready yet. I want to wait, and I want to do this. I want to hang out with my friends a little longer. I want to go, you know, I want to see stuff. I want to, you know, do all this stuff. And, you know, and God's like, no, you know, that's how it has to be. But, you know, it's that same thing. He was trying to, like, no, I'm not ready. I want to go back over here. I want to be human a little longer before, you know, I've got to come and do what you asked me to do and what I'm here to do in the first place. Why reason I was born.
Well, it's prophecy has to be fulfilled, though.
Exactly.
He kind of Jesus in that aspect reflects David too. Also, when David lost his son because David's people that guarded him, the priests. When David lost his son, David, he pretty much just jumped up and started doing his job again.
Mm-hmm.
And the priest actually came to him and asked him, "Why aren't you mourning for your child that died?" And David's response to them was, "You know, I mourned him while he was dying. I begged God, you know, for my child to be, you know, healed." And he's like, and he basically told them in so many words that, you know, he's gone now. Why should I go through a long period of mourning when there's other stuff that God wants me to do? And, you know, it's the same analogy with Jesus when he was praying. You know, Jesus knew that he had to fulfill what God wanted him to do. From that point forward, yes, he was wrestling with, you know, I want to stay here, God. Everybody does. You're human. But in his mentality, just like David, he knew he had a calling, and he had to complete that calling, not for himself, but for everybody else, because he knew he had a love for the people that he was God. So he also had that mentality of God's mentality. I've got to die for these people. I'd like to stay, but, you know, in so many aspects.
Right. All right, we'll go on to the next section. We're kind of running short. Social injustice. This is 1 Kings 12, 10 and 11. It said, "And the young men that were grown up and spake, and with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto these people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make it thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now, whereas my father did lay you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father hath chastised you with whips, and I will chastise you with scorpions." To some define social justice as a fair treatment of all people in society, while for others it means punishing certain people for their perceived social crimes. Due to the fluid nature of what constitutes a social crime, it is all too easy for people in power to wield absolute authority on such matters. Rehoboam's acceptance of unwise counsel led him down the wrong path. His friends recommended that he place heavier restrictions on the people, presumably to bring them under his subjugation. Like many in our culture who would sooner cancel or publicly shame someone than help them, Rehoboam chose a policy of harsh judgment that would have lasting consequences. Cancel culture has sprung up from a legitimate outcry for social justice. There is a genuine need for evil people to be punished and wicked systems to be reformed, but the opportunity has been seized by others who misuse their power, attempting to elevate their own opinions as the only right ones and to monopolize every conversation. Following the counsel of his friends, Rehoboam decided to assert his authority by a show of strength instead of compassion. This unfair oppression would push the people away from him instead of uniting them. Nearly all of us will have the responsibility to lead others at some point in our lives. Your leadership may be as apparent as mentoring relationship, or as obscure as unknowingly modeling patience or kindness to a coworker. Christians should avoid the folly of Rehoboam and instead decide to lead like Jesus through compassion and grace. Such leadership can have eternal results. Good morning.
Good morning.
And for a quick question here, it says, how can Christians avoid the temptation to abuse their power? I think the easiest way for that is to keep humble. Keep that, that humility, that humbleness about you. You're not going to be sitting there abusing your power or anything like that. As a Christian, they're always going to have that temptation, especially if you're in a leadership position. You're like, well, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do that. But if it's not right, still bowing to the will of the Lord, it's going to keep you in check. And, that you pray about what you're going to do and how you do it every single day and all that. He'll show you what to do. It's not necessarily one of those, I finally got this power after all these years of, trying to move up the ladder. And now that I'm here, I'm not going to let nobody move me from this spot. So everybody that comes up here, they're going to, I'm going to push them back down the best I can. And, that's sort of that same thing, the abuse of that power. You're supposed to disciple them and pull them up with you. But a lot of people don't, especially nowadays. But that's a lot of what that is. How do you avoid that? You keep that humility. And, I never understood that way everything is like that now. Nobody wants to help anybody to build themselves up anymore. That's the whole purpose of Acts. You're supposed to build up, your fellow Christians and things like that. But that's not a priority anymore for whatever reason. All right, so we go ahead and go over to part 3 real quick. It says, heeding unwise advice has consequences. The subsection is called public display of stupidity. It says, so Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king had appointed, saying, come to me again the third day. And the king answered the people roughly, and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, and I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was not... Okay. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, and that he might perform his saying, which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. The people made many of the same mistakes in the Iron Age as they do in the Internet age. although now thousands of people can watch failures online within minutes. Unfortunately for Rehoboam, this epic fail was on the display for all the kingdom to see. Certain segments of the media have made a living by curating lists of people's failures. Some are viewed so many times they become viral sensations. Because of this visibility, Rehoboam didn't have to wait for the news of his failure to spread. After 3 days of deliberation, Jeroboam and all the people returned to hear Rehoboam's decision. It's 1 Kings 12:12. The entire kingdom would see what was happening when Rehoboam spoke harshly to the people in verse 13, promising to lay heavier burdens on them and show more cruelty than his father had. By following the unwise advice of his friends instead of the counsel of experienced elders, Rehoboam paid no attention to the people, alienating 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. His foolish mistake cost him a majority of the kingdom and fulfilled the words of the prophet Isaiah. That was in 1 Kings 11:29 through 32. So decisions as pivotal as Rehoboam's may not seem likely to come up in the lives of Christians today. Most of us do not hold the power to divide countries or cause kingdoms to rise or fall. Good morning. However, we will make many impactful decisions throughout our lives, often with eternal consequences for ourselves and the people we influence. We must understand how to discern between right and wrong voices in the media. There are dramatic consequences when we do not. One of the questions here says, have you ever made a mistake that embarrassed you publicly? And how did you deal with the fallout? I think it happens. I think it happens. I mean,
oh, yeah. You just got to suck it up and deal with it.
That's it. You're like, oh, well, I messed up. I'm going to try to not do it again.
Or you go back to ask, well, we're human.
Mm-hmm.
We're human. We mess up.
Yep. Except for nowadays, when you mess up, people see it and they see it like over and over and over.
Oh, yeah.
That's what me and Jerry talked about years ago when we were kids. Didn't have phones and stuff to record shit.
Right. Like, yeah.
Nowadays it's...
Now they take a picture of everything. No.
Yep. There's nothing that gets by without being
Everybody
seen
has
somewhere.
pictures of the cat.
Yeah.
Take a picture of the people.
All right. And the last section is called the Court of Public Opinion. It's 1 Kings 12:16 through 19. It says, so when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inherited in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed into their tents. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute, and all Israel stoned him with stones, that he died. Therefore King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot, to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. So the court of public opinion, defined as the beliefs and judgments of the majority, seems to be social media's rule of law. If enough people push hard enough for a particular outcome, it tends to happen. Rehoboam may have been the king of all Israel, but his disrespect of the people caused every tribe except Benjamin and Judah to decide to no longer follow him or acknowledge his rule. The court of public opinion decided Rehoboam was not fit to be king, and Israel was split in two. Regardless of a person's intention when they chose a certain course of action, other people's perceptions cannot be controlled. There will be inevitable consequences. Listening to the wrong voices made Rehoboam an advisory to most of his kingdom. Though his intentions may have been to earn respect of his people, through fear, the consequences of his actions proved quite different. His responsibility tarnished the legacy of his forefathers, tore apart the kingdom, and diminished the inheritance of the descendants for generations. Listening to the wrong media or counsel in our day can also have serious unintended consequences. Christians are commanded to abandon the ways of the world and discern God's will by letting Him work in their lives. Don't copy the behavior and customs of the world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. It's Romans 12:2 in the New Living Translation. Public opinion is often diametrically opposed to the will of God. His opinion is the only one that truly matters. The closer our relationship with Him, the more wisdom we have in making decisions. God also has established elders and overseers to guide others according to Scripture. Their role includes correcting those who oppose the teachings of God's Word. It's Titus 1:9. Elders should be sought out for advice because there is great benefit in the gifts and experience God has given them. As Rehoboam found out, ignoring wise counsel and following unwise counsel can have severe consequences, both in the court of public opinion and one standing with God. And what is God saying to us? So Christians are flooded with innumerable opinions and biased information every time we turn on the TV or pick up our phones. From 24-hour news cycles and incessant push notifications to social media influencers desperate for likes and political talking heads disguising opinions as fact. The media is constantly telling us how to live. However, God's people aren't left to sort all this out alone. His Word and His Spirit are like a compass pointing us toward the truth. When we listen to Him and the trusted people He sends our way, we will be able to discern wisely between good and evil and stay on the path that leads to life. And the last question here says, discuss a time you did something in good intentions, but it was negatively received. That happens to me all the time. I'm like, oh, do this, all this. Oh, you need this? Let me get this for you or whatever, and then I'll go out and find what it is they need or whatever and come back and they're like, that's not what I wanted. I'm like, I'm here to give you what you need, not what you want. This ain't Burger King. But, there's a lot of that kind of, stuff like that. You try to help and people take it the wrong way. But that's it.